Well, good afternoon. I'm Blake Martin.
I'm Thomas Karakolis. Welcome to our very first ever chat today. Um,
So, yeah, our move early, move often chat.
yes,
Uh,
sir.
dur-
Yes, sir.
During these move early, move often chat, our intention is to address a topic, some kind of thing that is burning through our minds and something that we're thinking about. And because it's early days of our move early, move often channel, well, Thomas, what did you want to talk about?
Well, so some of you guys may have noticed that every day we have a theme for our daily movement sessions, from Momentum Monday all the way to Functional Friday. And full disclosure, Dr. Martin was the one who came up with each of the themes of the day. So I'm just hoping that, Blake, you're willing to describe to people why you picked the themes for each day that you picked.
Right. Yeah, so it was totally random. It was a roll of the dice. It was
That's
I
not
was just
true.
kind of I said what I need to use words that start with the same letter, and so that's what we came up with.
I don't
No,
believe that at all.
no. In honesty, um, I wanted to address what I thought were really big issues in our movement lives at home, and I wanted to look at them across kind of a developmental period, and rather than thinking of them as being some kind of different forms of exercise, I really wanted to consider how they might impact our health overall. So I thought really important to start the week with big movements and to focus on gross motor patterning. So your brain does things that are really kind of small, kind of tight movements, and but they also do big movements. So Momentum Monday is about these bigger movements, but also about rhythmic movement. And eventually, we're going to have music, and music is really important because there's these connections between this part at the back of our brain called the cerebellum and this other part kind of deep inside our brain called the basal ganglia. And those two parts communicate back and forth, and they're part of the rhythmic, the construction of the way we do rhythmic movement, and they're part of how we understand music. And in people who are aging populations, people with neurodegenerative diseases, dance, the Argentinian tango, and salsa, they've been really instrumental in helping people um, get better, to ameliorate, to not have as bad effects from that. So that's kind of what we got at there.
Okay, what about Twisted Tuesday then? What's the logic behind that?
Well, yeah, so the other thing that we often suffer from is we often suffer from restrictions in our body from the way we move, and some of those are caused by being too tight in one place, but sometimes they're also caused by being weak. So I wanted for us to look at range of motion and mobility rather than stretching per se. So we'll sometimes do kinds of stretching, but the idea isn't to be a yoga program or 5 days to do the splits or something like that. That's not the idea. The idea is for you to daily find opportunities to improve your mobility so that you can move more freely and better.
Okay, then we move on to Wobbly Wednesday.
Yes, yes, the wobbles and the Wednesday.
And the logic behind Wobbly Wednesday, I'm presuming, has to do with balance type of activities to make sure that our fine motor control is being improved.
Yeah, but really, there's a whole bunch of muscles that are very close to the center of your skeleton, like really close to the bones. You've got these great big muscles on top. Well, you have, Thomas. You've got these very big muscles on top, on the outside of your skeleton, where your beefy biceps and triceps are just kind of hogging all of the visual space. But down closer, we've got a lot of little muscles that are responsible for fine control, and they are responsible for positioning our body in space so that we have a good sense of we're well balanced. And these little muscles, they need care, and we need to work on them. And so that actually the larger muscles have a stable platform to work from. And so a lot of times we call these muscles core muscles. And I know that you have a lot to say about that, Thomas, based on your dissertation research. But the big idea is that if you take care of these little muscles that are close to the skeleton, close to the spine, that they have a real impact on our overall postural health and our health overall. And so I wanted to focus on those, and we can get at those through balancing activities because they really activate those muscles. But we can also do kind of specific activities that will help us to make our core stable so that we can move our limbs relatively freely, um, independently of our core.
Yeah, definitely. And I think right now might be a good time to kind of talk about, in terms of balance, you always think of there's really basically a couple of different factors that play into balance. One being your strength, and that's kind of what you talked about, as well as another being your ability to activate and control your muscles. And the third one is your flexibility, your range of motion. So
Right.
I think this kind of might be a good time to interject and talk about how the days almost work together sometimes, where we're looking at increasing your range of motion, or your movement abilities during a Twisted Tuesday. The balancing day generally works on some of the control type of activities as well as
Yes.
some of the strength type. But then we flow into the Throwdown Thursdays, where those are more big strength types of activities that we do. So do you want to talk a little bit more about Throwdown Thursday then?
Yeah. So again, there's a principle in kinesiology. We talk about this idea of progressive overload, where you're trying to you give a muscle a little bit more work, a little bit at a time, and eventually, if you do it for a longer period of time, for a longer duration, then you improve your endurance. And if you do it with greater load, then you improve your strength. And if you do it more quickly, then you can improve your power. So those three things work together. And our Throwdown Thursdays really look at those different uh, ways of improving our strength. Also, there's this idea of the throwdown being a little bit of a challenge. And so it's for each of us, where we are, wherever you are in your fitness and body journey, your movement journey, it's for you to become healthier relative to you. And hopefully, we'll have maybe a boxing person come on and show us some boxing stuff. And that's another way of throwing down too, is we can just kind of challenge ourselves in terms of different ways of movement and thinking through that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I like the way that you talk about Thursday being kind of the challenge day. And in terms of picking a day of the week, to me, Thursday seems like a really good day where you've got the majority of your week has been completed. So hopefully you feel a sense of accomplishment, but you're not already at Friday where you're thinking about winding it down. So Thursday seems like the perfect day for that challenge day. And
Yes.
then that brings us to Friday, the functional Friday, which to me is something I never would have thought of. And actually, it's turned out so far to be my favorite day of the week. But do you want to just explain some of the logic behind what the goals are on Functional Fridays?
Yeah. So as we move through our lifespan, um, we tend to make our movements more and more simplistic. We reduce our movement repertoire. We become less diverse in the things that we do, and consequently, the things we can do. And so there's a problem with that, in that um, we have less stability in our bodies, we have less flexibility. But there's some indications in the research as well that suggest that the more things you can do, the more things you can think about. There's this guy named Gibson in psychology, and he looked at this stuff called affordances, where if you could see different things that you could do with an object, then it allowed you to think in different ways about it. So, taking this principle, we're looking at complex movements, often movements that will cross a movement plane. And so we very frequently in our daily lives, we just move uniplanary. We uniplanarly. We move in one plane at a time. And
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
so it's really important to move across the planes, and it develops complex movement patterning that is really actually healthy. But we have to be cautious as well, because when we move into these other planes, we can do damage to our back or to our different joints. So it's educating ourselves so that we are moving appropriately and in healthy ways. But also, then we're exploring things like um, movement from different kinds of movement practices. For example, from parkour, there's a movement that allows people to climb better. And then there's movements that allow people to fall down safely. And there's movements that allow people to use complex movement patterning. And so you have to be mindful and thoughtful about the way you're moving. You can't just kind of throw yourself out there. So the Functional Friday is all about finding functional movement. And sometimes it's things as simple as how do we get up from a chair? What is involved in getting up in a chair so that we can do it appropriately and efficiently and find that efficiency in our bodies. And it's about expanding how we move so that we're moving better. We're not just moving more or bigger or stronger, but we're moving better. And that's the hope that the last day of the week would give us something to it's kind of a moment, so that when we're over the weekend, it gives us a little bit to consider about the way we move.
Yeah, one idea that you hit on that I really like, and maybe we can explore a little bit more in a further chat, but this idea of movement variability, and you
Yeah.
alluded to or might have outright said that as we age, and I like your expression that you use most Fridays about you plan on getting older, which doesn't mean that you plan on becoming less mobile or less active. You plan on
Yeah.
aging healthily is what you mean by it. But this idea that as we move, we sometimes decrease the variability in our movement, and there are
Yes.
reasons why we do this, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of you alluded to sometimes if we do movements we're not used to or that our body isn't well adapted to, there is a potential for us to injure ourselves. And it's almost this balancing act that we have to play, where we have to make sure that we're challenging ourselves at least a little bit every single day to make sure we maintain the skills that we have, and ideally end up developing new ways of moving healthily. But we don't want to do it too much to the point where we get hurt. And I think that's one of the themes that really comes out every Functional Friday that you do a great job of showing, Blake.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
But
So I think you've really summarized that idea well too, Thomas. That it's there's this whole idea, and you mentioned it earlier, right around Wednesday, of this flow through the week. And we're trying to get people not just through a week, but through a lifespan. And we're,
exactly.
we're, we're hoping that these 5 sessions are, you're, I mean, you could conceivably binge all of the Throwdown Thursdays and do all the Throwdown Thursdays in a row.
It'd be
Um,
tough.
yeah. Um, well, and the thing is, you do them as tough as you can for you, and you
Mhm,
could
mhm.
do that. But across our lifespans, we need to. We hopefully we're growing, right, and changing. And I think that you've really touched on that whole idea of growth across the week and growth across the lifespan. And that's what the 5 days of MEMO are all about.
Yeah, I think for now, it leaves us open to having a longer discussion on that for sure. But for today's chat, I think we've described each of the days fairly well. There is this idea of some continuity between the days, and Blake did share that idea that you could binge each of the days individually, but ideally, I think it makes a lot more sense to try and do something a little bit different each day, and that's why the days are what they are. Anything else we're missing today, Blake?
Yeah, one last thing. You may get to a day. There may be a day where it's Throwdown
Yes.
Thursday, and your
Yeah.
body is not there.
Hmm.
You need for your body to do a different thing. And I think you need to understand that you have the permission and the right, and maybe even you need to be able to find the respect within your own self, um, to give yourself the right
That goes for
to,
any day of the week, I think, right? Like not
to
just
do what you
Thursdays.
need to do, or to do
Hmm.
nothing.
Yep.
So if you come and it's Throwdown Thursday and you just can't do that because whatever is going on in your life and you just can't, then pick a Twisted Tuesday, or pick a Wobbly Wednesday. Work on something skill based, and just be sensitive to your own needs.
Great, great
Uh,
points, Blake.
yeah. So I think
Awesome.
that's about it.
Perfect. We'll do this again for the next chat.
Awesome. Good talking with you, Thomas.
Always great talking with you, Blake.
Take care.
You too.